firstly, I'd like to just thank our panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us today. And I'm going to dive right into it, asking them to introduce themselves to our audience. So without further delay, I'm going to ask Sanyagita to please introduce herself. Thank you, Sanyagita.
There you go. Sanyagita Shamsundar. I'm responsible for new product and innovation and strategy at Verizon Wireless, primarily focusing on 5G and related products. Excited to be here today with this esteemed panel.
Thank you, Sanyagita. Looking forward to your insights.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tamina Hayter. I head up an organization called Harry's Labs within Harry's, the broader company that many of you hopefully know, focused on men's and now women's grooming and personal care. My responsibility is to oversee all of our new brand development, so the brands that we start internally, as well as the brands we look externally to acquire. So thinking a lot about what's happening in the consumer world, how are technology and digital trends changing how consumers interact with brands, and how can we build the best experience for consumers across all of our brands.
Wonderful, thanks Timina. Looking forward to your insights. And Suk from Mastercard. Hi, Suk.
Hi, everyone. I'm Suk, and I'm responsible for digital payments and cybersecurity products for Mastercard Canada. We are really focused on building safe, secure, and seamless payment experiences for all of you, but working very closely with our merchant partners, banks, acquirers, financial institutions, making sure we're bringing the best of technology as more of our lives move toward digital. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Hi, Shelly, are you there?
Well, hi, I'm Shelly Brunswick. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Space Foundation, and the Space Foundation is a nonprofit, and we are the global premier advocate for education, connecting, and information related to space exploration, as well as space technology here on Earth. And it's a pleasure to join you. And before joining the Space Foundation, I was in the US Air Force for almost 30 years as a space acquisition program manager. So again, excited to be here joining you.
Wonderful, thank you, Shelly. And Dara, hi Dara. Okay, we'll come back to Dara. Frida, are you there?
Hi, I'm Frida Polly. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pymetrics. Prior to Pymetrics, I was an academic scientist at Harvard and MIT. And Pymetrics uses behavioral science, soft skills and AI to help match the workforce of the future.
Joe, over to you.
Great. Awesome to be here. Wow, what a panel this is. I'm like super pumped. I'm just really excited to be on the panel also and hearing from you guys. So one thing that I want to kick this off with is something known as a concept referred to as the broken rung. So one of the biggest challenges women face on the pathway to senior leadership is that very first step into being a manager, and that is being called the broken rung. Women are entering the workforce at nearly equal numbers as men, but this early inequality, tripping up on that broken rung, has long-term impact on the talent pipeline and a long-term impact on our careers. So I want to start off by hearing a little bit about this. If you've experienced it, how you experienced it, what were the things that you really had to embrace, what traits, what skills, in order to get over that first hurdle when you guys were early into your careers? So if I could get Sanyogita, Shelly, Suk to start off that conversation would be great.
Yeah, Joanna, thanks for that question. I think if I remember correctly, the first time I was kind of a leader, sort of a manager, was at a startup, right? I think the most important thing to be is be very passionate about your work, know what you're doing, and be the master of the topic that you are presented, and take the opportunity to mentor junior people. And don't be so, I guess, hung up on getting credit, I would say, right? Be helpful, be open, be collaborative, communicate, go talk to others about their projects, and show genuine interest in the work. As well as be authentic. I think that's the most important. Get help. It won't be the first person that you approach may not be open or receptive, but don't give up. Keep talking to people, both men and women. Junior to you, senior to you, doesn't matter. I think we need to basically communicate. There's no substitute for that. I would say that is the beginning of establishing yourself as a leader, because as a leader you have to do that. You have to connect.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, we are always afraid to ask for help or say that we need help, but it is so important in the journey. Shelly, what about you?
Well, here at the Space Foundation, we have a workforce development roadmap that has 5 steps, and it's about awareness, access, training, connecting, and mentoring. And so what I would say is, as you're looking to make that first step on the ladder of being a leader, finding a mentor, a champion, and a coach can be critical. A mentor is someone who can help you with certain skill sets. A coach is someone who can help you with maybe that executive presence. And a champion is somebody who's more senior to you that can help position you for opportunities, because you may not be aware of all the opportunities that are before you or what your career path could take. So that's why it's really important to have that coach, champion, and mentor. And I'll also say building your network, finding other individuals that share your passion. The reason I found the job at the Space Foundation is I did not go on a job board. Somebody knew that the job was advertised. They knew I was looking. And so they sent me, hey, do you know somebody interested? So again, it's about building those networks and maintaining those networks. Those will carry you not only to the next run, but throughout your career. So, and then once you have a mentor, always remember that you can be a mentor to and help the next generation behind you.
Yeah, absolutely. Network is so key, can really firepower you in your career. Suk, if you want to round it out.
Sure. Yeah. Both Senior Gita and Shelly made good points. I would add from my personal experience back when I was, my first management role, and I even see that on the talents on my team, is women are starting to really enter the workforce in equal numbers as men, as you said. 2 things. I would say persistence and a healthy dose of thoughtful risk taking. Women tend to only raise their hands when they feel they are 10 on 10 on all the requirements for a job. But I would say take the risk, even if you're 6 out of 10 or 5 out of 10, even, raise your hand. At least you'll get noticed that you're interested in going to that next level, and you'll be persistent about it. So those things helped me, and just speaking or sharing from my personal experience.
Yeah, 100%. I remember early in my career when getting credit for things wasn't working out, I just started raising my hand for everything. And you get to that point where you take on more than you can chew, but then it takes you on a wonderful journey. So that was great. And thanks so much for sharing. Those are really valid points. So Frida and Tamina and Dara, I want to hear from you guys as well. Advocating for ourselves is really important. You can't get what you don't ask for, but advocating for each other is also really important. So can you provide a little bit of insight into how you have supported the growth and promotion of other women in your life, on your team, juniors on your team in particular, and how you have experienced it yourselves? Frida, if you want to kick us off.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, I think, Pymetrics has equal representation, men and women. And I think it's definitely due to having a, female co-founding team. And as a result, I think we, take great pride in making sure that, women have the same opportunity as men in advancing through the company. And I think it's really critical to mentor, women, particularly early in their career when, to your point, they may not have as many opportunities or may not feel as, worthy of those opportunities. So I think it's especially critical. And I think it comes, it's everything from large things to small things. Like one of the things that I try to get all of my women that work at Pymetrics and also my daughters to not do is apologize. So I think it's an unfortunate habit we all have that I noticed in my 4-year-old the other day. She kept saying sorry. I said, Rosie, don't say sorry. Like banish that word from your vocabulary because we use it way too often. So I think mentorship can take many forms, small acts of mentorship all the way to really making sure that women have real career growth opportunities at the companies that we work at.
I love that. No more apologizing. It's always a really important reminder.
It was crazy to see it in a 4-year-old. I was like, why is this happening? Don't do that.
Tamina?
I think for myself as a leader in multiple areas in the investing world, which is a world which is very much male dominated, I've actually found as I've become more senior and taken on leadership roles that women have sort of gravitated onto my team. It wasn't something I anticipated, but actually ended up happening. And it's something that I've then in turn tried to really nurture and think about how I can be a mentor and a leader and help those women grow their careers. A couple of things that I found have been, I think, good tools for them to use. One is, and others have mentioned this, but there's often these things called jump balls at work. There are things that are available to do that are not really in anyone's specific job scope, and they're often cross-functional in nature. And I encourage women to raise their hands and take them. They may not be a new job, but they provide real leadership and cross-functional opportunities. So I'm always really pushing women on my team and across the organization that I mentor to do those, to take those. Another thing is a mentorship. We've all talked about it. The one thing I would say is we all know about the concept of radical candor, and making sure that the women on your team and that you mentor more broadly understand that the feedback that you're giving them, even if it's sometimes not that great to hear, is coming from a place of really caring about them. And that's actually hard on you as a leader. Giving difficult feedback is not the easiest thing to do, but you've got to invest in it, and you've got to make sure that folks understand why. It's actually an indication of how much you care. And then the last thing I would say as a leader is that we have a responsibility to be advocates for women in the room. And so it's about, raising your hand to serve on that promotion committee. It's about, talking about that thing that feels it might be happening in the room, and making sure that people, for example, who have different styles are all getting recognized when it comes to promotions and the like.
I love that. So, so important. Wonderful. And Dara?
Sure, Joanna. I would say that something that's really important is simply transparency and exposure. I can tell you the number of times that I've worked with female leaders in my organization or even with my teams. A lot of times we skip over telling our journey and our unique path to the road to leadership. It's oftentimes reserved for forums such as this. And I think that that's a missed opportunity. We all have a unique path and an individual journey, but I find that when I share my journey to leadership and I'm transparent with my teams, they can identify and relate with some of the experiences that I've had. And that way we've addressed a commonality, and we can understand who we are as leaders, and be able to collaborate and work more closely together. I think after that, I would say for someone who is on that path to continued leadership, exposure. There's just been several mentors of mine who have, one, shared their personal journey with me, but secondly, who exposed me to communities and to rooms and to opportunities that I may not have been in before. So as an example, I have one mentor who's a CMO, and she explained to me that her objective was to get to the C-level, and then her vision beyond that was to serve on public boards, and public boards can translate into paid opportunities. Well, so I said, oh, okay, so that's the big picture. I need to learn the skills or develop the skills to be on that same pathway. And so through that conversation, one of the things that she did was brought my name up in a room, and I was invited to serve on a board community. So now I'm getting the skills and experiences that I need to forge my pathway forward. And so that exposure, I think, is a huge opportunity for leaders and mentees.
I love that. I mean, having the courage to share our story, it takes courage and vulnerability, but can also net some really great returns. And it's awesome to see that in your career trajectory as well. And thanks so much for sharing that. On that note, in terms of sharing, we're also looking to get more skills. We want to say the things we want to be, but then we want to get those skills, which we like to say at BrainStation. It's a lifelong journey of learning. Never stop learning. We want to be future-proof. Doesn't matter what age or what position you are at your career. So on that note, could you guys speak to, at your companies, what are some of the training resources and programs that are available to women in your company? And how are these initiatives being supported by leadership so that people can gain these skills, women can gain these skills? And Sanyogita, if you could kick us off on this, would be great.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the first things that we have to do to create programs like this is to recognize that there is an inequality, right? The numbers don't look good, transparency. So we, for the first time, we issued a report last year, which is public. We have about 33% globally at our company, but when you look at the technology group, it's only about 18%. So we have instituted programs. We've had some programs, but we have doubled down on them. We have something called Women of the World, Women of Wireless now, and Women of the World now, where we bring in the best of breed and have men and women mentors. It's a 12-month long program. Very very successful last year, and we've had like oversubscription this year. And understanding that we need different types of programs. So that's one. We instituted one more called Success Circles, where all the women in our larger organization, we have created an informal group of employees as well as managers, male managers more importantly, that can meet on a regular basis. This is like a 7-month long program, and exchange ideas and have a place where they can network and get to know each other and understand some of the challenges. I must say we have gotten great response from our male allies, and we cannot do this without having male allies participate in this wholeheartedly. And those are some of the programs that we have done. Of course, there are other programs that we have for specifically for Asian women and Hispanic women as well, and men and African American men and women. So there are many programs, but on the women front, we have doubled down on these two programs. And of course, we have a Verizon-wide Women of Verizon ERG, of course, that also has programming, but these are specifically geared towards leadership programs. And I'm always talking to women. Many people approach me, and I kind of identify with what Temina said. When they see women leaders, they come asking curiosity about how did you get there, what did you do, understanding that all our paths are not the same. They're all and they're not linear always, right? They're non-linear, but giving them that confidence that there are many ways to get to where you want to go is important, because sometimes you get hung up on it. If this needs to be in this progression, may not happen always like that. So that's something that we do.
It never is a straight line, even though we would like it to be. That's for sure. Suk, how about over at Mastercard?
Yeah, a lot of what Sunogita said, we have similar programs as well, but I would say even beyond our employee base, the way Mastercard operates, we see that there's lots of opportunity to include everyone, and we're on a mission to design a better world for women that creates limitless possibilities for us. So we do have training programs and mentorship programs where we mentor women's leadership and growth. In fact, we've had a lot of success with that. So we have about 33% female representation at senior levels, that is VP and above, and 39% of our global workforce are women. So these are good numbers. They are above tech industry norms, but that's not adequate, right? We got to continue to keep working, and we need to do more. So definitely not just resting on our laurels. I think a lot of people have talked about this, but really mentorship is another key area for us, and we've launched campaigns. We love our priceless brand. So the campaign is called Her Ideas Start Something Priceless. And the idea is to not only provide mentorship to our employees, but really extend beyond and help women entrepreneurs connect with mentors and communities and other resources, and really trying to have an impact just beyond people we directly touch within our organization, and go beyond. And the extension of it is also girls or children of not only Mastercard employees, but girls like everywhere, and encouraging them to participate in STEM programs, because as we all know, that's another key area of opportunity where there's a sharp drop off in engagement when it comes to STEM for girls during the pre-college days. So we have a Girls for Tech program, which we participate in with other corporate partners, and we're trying to reach about 25 million girls by 2025. So those are some of the things that we're doing. But one that is a particular favorite of mine that I would like to add is this idea of giving women who are in their mid-career looking for a change a chance. So we have a particular program dedicated towards that allows women who want to change their careers midway through, nurturing that and helping them explore different areas, explore technology areas. So those are some that I would share that we're seeing success as a result of.
I love that. supporting those here now and also the future generations. So that's really important. I'd love to hear from the others as well in terms of not only initiatives within your companies, but also programs and initiatives that you've also seen and heard about and how they're affecting this as well. So if anyone wants to jump in.
Hi, this is Shelly. I'll jump in. So one of the things the Space Foundation does through our Center for Innovation and Education is very similar to BrainStation. We believe in lifelong learning, K through 12 or primary school, teaching teachers, reskilling and upskilling the workforce, and then allowing more entrepreneurs to come into the space ecosystem. And when we look at that space ecosystem, we're looking at launch vehicles and rockets, but we're also looking at fintech and agriculture and the Internet of Things. And all those jobs are very diverse, from a high school diploma and maybe a certificate in advanced manufacturing all the way to PhDs. And so our goal at the Space Foundation is to highlight all those careers and career paths. And we would say, it's about diversity and inclusion, but we really like to say it's an underrepresented groups. And those underrepresented groups could be rural communities or inner city, as well as regions of the world. So I share that that's kind of our mission at the Space Foundation. And many of the organizations we partner with, like the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs, has a mentoring program. So you can check that out. Women Tech Network has a mentoring program, and that is open to men and women because they want to reach out to diversity and underserved as well. And anybody else who's interested in space, there's Space Generation Advisory Council. So I just kind of share a couple resources and career paths as well that the Space Foundation tries to highlight.
And if I can jump in, Joanna, I mean, I think we don't have, programs or, anything as structured as that. But I think what Pymetrics has really been able to do to accelerate women's careers has really been to give people a chance where they potentially would have not had that opportunity at a more traditional company. And so, for example, I mean, everything from taking folks that didn't have a degree in computer science and training them, or folks that, had a PhD in a different field, but now wanted to become data scientists, or, there's a whole, I mean, I can think of many, many instances like that. And I think that, and then those folks have, used Pymetrics to then go and do additional great things in that field. So I really believe that we have, and it doesn't just apply to women, but I think women are maybe even less likely to seek out and get those opportunities of really trying to try a different career path. And I think we, for whatever reason, have been really good at giving all people, but women also a really great opportunity to do that. And I would encourage many to do that, because I think that, it's something that in particular women are less good at, is to say, look, I know I don't have the 10 bullet points that you need for this job, but I really believe that I can do it. And I think we should, when women are raising their hand, I think it behooves us to take them up on that challenge.
Yeah, those are all great points. And I think it's actually a great segue into the next question that I have, which is around confidence. And there's a book by Katty Kay and Claire Shipman called The Confidence Code that found that competency is less likely to be an obstacle than confidence when it comes to career progress for women. And companies also place a high value on referrals and referred candidates. LinkedIn actually recently reported that women are, in fact, 26% less likely to ask for a referral than men. Both of these insights signal a confidence gap. So maybe I'd love Suk and Dara to kick this answer off, but do you think there is a confidence gap? And if so, how do you think we can close this gap?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Ian. And there does exist that gap. And some of it may even call it the imposter syndrome. Sometimes you're at a table and you don't really feel like you belong. And so that impacts your ability to really raise your voice and participate. So I think it's a two-way road is my answer to that. And how do you solve for that? So of course, there's some level of, you got to believe in yourself. Like I said, healthy appetite for risk. But I think the leaders have a key role to play. So if you are on a table where you have young talent and they're not speaking up, I think it's your responsibility to pause and ask them for their point of view, create a space that they feel comfortable in. Because it's funny, I was talking to a few young women just not very long ago, and they all shared this concern, and they shared examples of leaders who've done this well, and one of them shared that a very senior leader, after a meeting that she didn't speak in at all, took her aside and said, we value and your point of view, and we want to hear from you. So in the next meeting, like, please feel free to speak up. And that really stuck with her, and she felt that much more confident going into the next meeting or next conversation. So if we can even just take 2 minutes out of our time as leaders to convey that to younger talent, it's not giving them permission, but it's almost like that. It'll make them that much more comfortable and confident going forward, and feel like their voice is appreciated and is welcome.
And before Dara, you join in there, I just want to make this point very clear, that when you say leaders, it's so important that men recognize the confidence gap in women and actually recognize that moment. And it shouldn't just be coming from women. It should be men also kind of pulling them up and giving them that permission to speak and permission to also not be right. That is important. Sorry, Dara, go for it.
I think, all too often we have molded a society and live in a world where perfect images, perfect resumes, perfect performance is seemingly the expectation. So I think oftentimes there's this issue of confidence, but I think it can be combined with this issue of fear of perception, fear of the consequences, fear of backlash for speaking up, or for asserting yourself as a woman in business. And so I think that there is a two-pronged approach to this. One is, giving more time and attention to developing emotional skills in terms of developing yourself to what your emotional response is to rejection, to negative consequences. I think if we develop that muscle and that emotional response, we'll be less fearful of what the consequences are on the other end. The second piece of that is we have to, and maybe this is related, we have to start speaking more about our failures. This goes back to what I was saying about leaders talking about their journey and being transparent. Again, it seems that most of those stories and narratives of failure are reserved for forums and panel conferences like this. And so I think if we more broadly talk about the mistakes we've made, the failures we've had, and the end result, that would empower more young female leaders and just people in general to not be afraid to fail and not be afraid to be their authentic selves in the workplace.
Can I make a point here? Because I actually have a somewhat strong opinion about this. So again, as a female founder, I think this is very relevant to when you are pitching investors and all sorts of things, right? And I have actually had that feedback that, I lack confidence. Now, Tamina went to business school with me. I don't think that anyone thought at HBS that Frida Pauly lacked confidence. So I actually think the problem is not so much that women lack confidence, it's that the image of what it means or what it means to look confident is actually a very male image, right? And I may not fit that male image because when I go into an investor presentation, I'm not doing that, not to be, whatever, but the sort of very overconfident presentation. I might be quite confident, but I'm not going in the opposite direction and, engaging in that extremely overconfident behavior that I don't think, I don't really particularly want to do that. I don't think that's super helpful, right? So when we talk about a gap, we have to ask if confidence is here, is it that women are here or is it that men are over here? And potentially that's the bigger challenge, right? So again, I actually think, it's more about having enough women in positions of leadership that can present an alternative image of what confidence looks like, rather than everyone feeling like, oh, I need to fit the mold of male confidence and that stereotype, which I don't think is necessarily helpful. So
can I chime in if you don't mind? I completely agree with Frida. I think we have this maybe an antiquated approach to what leadership looks like. I think we need to probably redefine what it is, and having a variety of leaders is important. We all don't need to be the same, and I think having, exhibiting that vulnerability or saying that you were wrong or not having all the information is okay to say, and I can say that at this point in my career because I can. But I think exhibiting that is important for the younger generation, that it is okay not to BS.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Is it okay if I chime in on?
Yeah, please go for it, Simon.
No, I just want to pick up on Frida's point because I could not agree with it more. And in this world of founders and entrepreneurs and fundraising is a two-sided like table, right? You've got somebody who's trying to raise money, and you've got someone who's going to fund that money. Or provide that money. And for too long, there's been too few women on both sides of that table, quite frankly. And today you are seeing some strides to improve both sides. But at the end of the day, most female entrepreneurs are pitching to men. And there is still a dominance of men who are pitching at the end of the day. So they are setting the tone of how these pitches go. And it is actually statistically proven that women bring to the table more realistic forecasts than men. Yeah. And then are more likely to hit those forecasts over time. But unfortunately, in the world that we live in today, you are rewarded for the sort of inflated forecast, for example, that you might bring, an inflated vision for your business. And so, my advice to women entrepreneurs, as someone who does get to be on the other side of the table, is one, be bold. Be bold, be really confident, and be bold about the vision you have, because you probably do have a really bold vision. You wouldn't be building this business if you didn't have a bold vision, and champion yourself in your ability to get there. That said, you don't need to go to a place that feels uncomfortable. That is not a requirement to be successful and to demonstrate confidence. And so you can show your confidence in other ways. So for example, you can demonstrate that you do hit forecasts, and that and build a different kind of confidence and a different kind of credibility than men do. And so I just couldn't agree with Frida more, insofar as it is about pushing women to be confident and be bold, and to really demonstrate that confidence externally. But it's also about changing the metrics that we have around what confidence is, so that the way that women show up also feels resonant.
I love that. Having an empathetic approach to what confidence is and how it's defined, and realizing it's not just one approach. And it's actually a great segue to this next question, which is around the fact that employees look to their leaders to set the tone for the organization. And this is a moment in time that we can continue to keep building and changing that tone, and how that tone comes to life, to make sure it's an open, safe, and inclusive environment. And so I'd like to go to Frida and Sanyagita on this question. What's one thing you do as leaders to encourage that open and safe, vulnerable environment for your teams and your women specifically to feel they can step up and be confident in their way?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it kind of builds on the previous point here. Years ago, when I was a new employee at a company, one of the female leaders said to me in a meeting, I couldn't hear you. Can you speak up? Can you speak up and express your point in a louder voice? And that kind of struck with me. I mean, I don't know if she meant it genuinely or whatever, but it's something that I carry forward and make sure that I practice as well for others. Especially these days when we are on a Zoom call like this, watch out for somebody who's unmuting and wants to say something, or maybe I specifically sometimes point out to women who have contributed to the project, because I know that they have, but are not speaking because a male colleague is presenting. I ask for their opinion, one-on-ones, skip levels, in informal meetings. It doesn't have to be a presentation. I try to, that's how I try to connect with people in my team and beyond my team as well. And then bringing volunteers, interns, volunteering at intern, bring in interns, female interns, speaking at intern events, making yourselves open and available for people to approach you and not feel like, there's a barrier. I think that's important. Be approachable for females as well as men.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I have a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, I think first of all, just try to be as human as possible, because I think as a leader, people don't think of you as human. They, whatever, like it was a weird transition to go from like, this is Frida saying this to like, this is the CEO saying this, because I would say something and get a very different reaction. I was like, I'm not sure why people are reacting this way. And people are like, oh, it's because you're the CEO. I was like, oh, that's right. So it's just this weird kind of thing. So you have to you have to just be as human as you possibly can be in every possible way to kind of mitigate that, right? And I think that involves, I mean, like, for example, like we had to go through a very painful RIF last year, during COVID. And, I cried, because it was done virtually on top of it all. It was a horrible, horrible experience, right? So hopefully just being as, human as you possibly can be, overcome some of that. And then I think, but the other thing I do want to say about this is I think, and there's been, articles written about this, I think, again, it's back to this, like, women have to be perfect. There's, was this great article written in Fortune about how women CEOs get treated much more harshly by the media, by their boards, and so on, right? If they engage in behavior that, might be perceived as, abrasive, or, this, that, and the other. And I do think we have to really question, yes, we are human. Yes, we do everything we can. But at the same time, like, I don't think we need to be judged differently than a man in terms of what are men doing to, make people feel safe and accepted. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't want to set the expectation that that just creates an image of perfection that is hard for any human being to hit, and then can really backfire, because then people are expecting you to be the strong leader, but also empathic. And, it's sort of like, the perfect mom syndrome, right? You have to be doing everything perfectly. You are going to screw up at times. You are going to mess up. And hopefully if you're human with people and empathic, those folks will also give you the benefit of the doubt and say, you know what, Frida, had a bad day, or, X, Y, and Z. So I do everything I possibly can, but I'm also a human being. And I would think we should allow females to be human beings and not, be this perfect person all the time.
Fantastic. My last question before we hand over to Joe is, Tamina and Shelly, if you could chime in here about the startup world. And we touched on it very briefly in terms of the different challenges women face in trying to launch their ventures in their companies. What unique challenges do women face, or freelancers, should I say, as they try to get their business off the ground?
I can chime in on that one, Ian. Well, I certainly spoke a little bit about one of the challenges that women face when it comes to fundraising, but maybe taking a step back. First of all, I have never been a founder. I fund founders. I've never been a founder myself, and I have the utmost respect for founders, because there is nothing that requires more confidence and being more bold than starting your own company and taking that huge risk and making an enormous bet on yourself. So first of all, I would just encourage women to do it, because it takes just taking that leap is a big thing. The second thing, though, I would encourage women who are on that path to do is to recognize they are not going to be doing it alone. And even though other people look like they did a lot of it on their own, nobody is doing it on their own. And the most successful entrepreneurs that I've worked with have had a very strong network around them. And that is a network of supporters that are women and men, and who are other entrepreneurs, who are investors, who are advisors. They surround themselves with folks that they can reach to for advice at all times, so they aren't sitting alone at the top of the mountain. And so I would encourage any female entrepreneur to really invest in that. And don't be shy, ask for help. Everyone else is doing it. You're not the only one doing it. And then the second sort of piece, I would say, beyond the fundraising point, which I raised earlier, is that, women-founded businesses often are addressing women-centric problems. And then you're going and presenting to often male investors, which means you are wasting precious time in a 30-minute pitch explaining why your business even exists. And what I would tell you is, like, anticipate that challenge, get ahead of it, find a way to explain that in a minute or two that's going to resonate with an audience that doesn't know the problem that you're talking about. Don't assume they're you. Don't assume they're other women. Because when you have 30 minutes to present, to do a pitch, you got to make every minute count. So those would be my two things I would add on top of what I mentioned earlier.
I'll just share a couple things. So at the Space Foundation, we do have a entrepreneurship program called our Space Commerce Entrepreneurship Program. We initially launched it in partnership with the Minority Business Development Agency from the Department of Commerce. And our goal was to help to get more underrepresented groups into the space ecosystem. And the first step, again, is awareness and then creating access. So for those of you in the audience who are listening and want to be an entrepreneur and you don't have a great idea, NASA Technology Transfer Office has thousands of patents that are waiting to be commercialized. There's business grants available through the government. So if you want to be an entrepreneur and you don't have an idea, go to the NASA Technology Transfer Office. And again, the Department of Energy and the Air Force Research Lab and a number of other government agencies have patents that are waiting to be commercialized. The other thing is you can go onto our website and we have 15 free webinars you can watch about what is space commerce and what does it mean to be an entrepreneur. Well, it's really just like being any other entrepreneur, except you're in the space ecosystem. So look at that. And I agree with everything that was said. You know, building that network, what do women many times lack is that network. Because when we had women participate and minorities participate in our program, what we helped them do was connect into the space ecosystem. And many times they were able to come out with awards from companies and government agencies because they just were able to make the right connections. So getting involved in the right network is critical, as well as finding that mentor. The other organization I am affiliated with is the World Business Angels Investment Forum. And that's a global organization that's an affiliate of the G20. And the goal of WBAF is to help empower individuals around the world to find that access and opportunity. And they believe in finding that access and opportunity 50% for women. So their fund specifically will invest 50% for women. And so it's also looking at the investment community to say, are we going out of our way to make sure we're being equitable and we're not going in maybe not seeing that women present differently. And then it's also working with governments, because governments many times can invest, as I shared. The US government has small business innovative research grants again. So are governments around the world also investing in that diversity to ensure that there's full equity? Because what we've learned is when women around the world are empowered to be entrepreneurs, they elevate not only themselves, but their families and their communities. So it's valuable to our entire world and ecosystem to empower women, to provide them the financing, and to support them in becoming entrepreneurs.
I love that. Support has been a word that has come up many times. It is so key to get support from men and women, from peers, from role models that you look up to. So I do want to talk a bit about allyship, which everyone has mentioned a little bit here. So, you know, there are our male allies who are definitely out there, probably tuning in here, probably people in your lives you want to celebrate who have been key players, a part of your career. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. What male allies have played an important role in your lives, also as an example for those listening, either to encourage it in the men around them or the men who are listening in. And Dara, if you could kick us off, that would be great.
Sure, Joanna. I think two of the allies for me that come to mind are a man named Justin Thomas Copeland, who is a CEO of a global media agency, and also another man named Chris Lawanga, who is a partner at Microsoft. I think for me, I met these men organically, just as we've all stated, community and network is a really, really important piece of being able to advance your pathways forward. But for me, as I've grown in role, I find that the negotiations become a lot more complex. And when I'm going through a negotiation situation, of course, I consult my female mentors, but it's also my male mentors who really give me that extra level of confidence and re-emphasize not to be shy or fearful of making an ask of what I'm deserving or actually what I need to be happy and fulfill my role. So these men have set the example. In addition to that, outside of just my day-to-day role as a paid employee, I volunteer with several nonprofit organizations. And one of the nonprofit organizations I volunteer with is the Mandela Legacy Foundation. And during a time in my life where I had a gap in employment, Zandwa Mandela, which is the grandson of Winnie and Nelson Mandela, reached out to me and gave me an opportunity to volunteer. And his organization's mission is bringing jobs at scale to address the rampant unemployment among South African youth. And the solution to bringing in jobs at scale is through the BPO industry and space. And so for me, my volunteer work then exposed me to a completely different sector, which is business process outsourcing, and allowed me to develop some new skills, new relationships, and also have a global touch point in helping the lives of others. And so those are probably the three men that I would acknowledge that have been incredible mentors to me.
I love that. That sounds incredible. And I saw lots of nodding when I first started teeing up the question. I saw Tamina, Frida in particular, if you want to jump in.
I'm happy to jump in quickly. I mean, I think it's important to have, allies across the board, and also to, I mean, somebody asked me about this recently, and I said, I think that, I've had mentors for particular times in my career, right? And, I think that people have been particularly helpful, for, 2-year periods, 3-year periods, 4-year periods. And then, a new set of folks will come in. And I think you're always looking for people that you have an affinity with, who really believe in you, and who are willing to go to bat for you when, times are tough. And, there are a lot of times that times are tough. So you definitely need to be reaching out to those folks. And, I don't, to Tamina's point earlier, I mean, I don't know where I would be without many mentors and advocates that I've had along the years, both men and women. So yes, I would just continually be looking for folks that really, you just really appreciate and really believe in what you're doing, because they're definitely out there for sure.
Yeah, I would just echo what Frida mentioned, and what Dara mentioned as well. I think the point I would add is that I think sometimes there's two things. Women are a little more reluctant to ask for mentors, because at the end of the day, when you ask someone to be a mentor, you're asking them for their time. The more senior they are, the more precious their time is. So it is a big ask. And so one, I would say, like, don't be afraid to ask for mentors. Most people who are leaders actually really enjoy working and seeing other people's grow. That's why they became leaders. And so they probably would be leaning towards wanting to take on mentors. And the other thing is, I do think you need to have mentors of all types, both in terms of like functional and what they can offer, whether it's negotiation or self-promotion, or it's more skill-based. Like, you need folks who can supplement you in different ways, and you need to have that diversity. But I would also encourage, I do think women, because they tend to identify with other women, do often reach out for female mentors, but it's important to ask for get male mentors too, because you want your mentors to have different points of view than you do.
Yes.
And that's where, like, pushing for those male mentors is really, really important. So take that leap, take that extra leap, ask for that male. If there's that male that you work with that you think could be a fit for you, like, go for it. The worst that can happen is that he says he's too busy.
Yeah.
And can't.
But can I just add to that, Tamina? I don't know that I've ever asked somebody, will you be my mentor? I think I've just asked them for help when I needed help. And to my mind, that is the same as mentorship. Do you know what I mean? So I think people do it differently, and I think it's totally fine to ask for formal mentorship. But I think from my perspective, it was more around having folks that really believed in me, that I could ask for really critical advice or help or whatever when I needed them. So I would just expand the definition of mentor.
100%. It's that person when you have a big decision, you can call them, email them, text them, be like, can we find 30 minutes in the next 2 days? I've got an important question to ask you. That feels like, really getting that broad set of folks for that feels really important. Totally agree with you, Frida.
Yeah, absolutely. And mentorship is talked about a lot, but there is that kind of gap. Everyone wants a mentor. How do you get it? Do you ask, please be my mentor? Or that's a great strategy. Asking someone a question is such a great way to draw them in. Lindsay asked about this as well in the audience. She asked about this specific advice for selecting a mentor. So you guys shared a little bit about how, and she would want to know a little bit more about how to select that mentor. Is it good to go to your direct superior, or do you suggest going to someone outside of your organization and team? Anyone can jump in on this.
I'd love to chime in.
Go ahead, Suk.
Thank you. So these are some of the tips or tricks that I've used for myself. One, if I really enjoyed working with a boss of mine and then I'm changing roles, if they're changing roles, I've asked them. I've explicitly asked them if you would like to, let's continue the dialogue. I think it was more a formal ask when I was more junior in my career. Now, as I've progressed, now it's just a granted thing, like Frida mentioned, like you just call them up when you have a question and you get to find 30 minutes in the next 2 days kind of thing. So it happens more organically as you grow forward. So, but that's one trick I employ, because I find that they need to have a little bit of sense of who you are and what you're capable of and have seen you in action. I've also been matched through various programs with very senior leaders in my organization, and that's also been great. But then there's a little bit of a ramp up period where they get to know you and you get to know them, and then, then they can give advice. But it's still great to have that because they can give you a perspective that you need, like that's outside of your bubble, which is also great. You need to have a perspective from outside of your bubble, and having a healthy mix of advocates, but maybe even skeptics. I would go for multiple mentors and that bring very different type of thinking to the table.
Yeah, perspective.
So those would be my 3 hacks.
Perspective is so important, and critical feedback is just killer for being amazing in a career. We did have a great question for Senyogita, and everyone can chime in as well, from Carolina. She is in her first year of being an engineering lead on her path to leadership. And she was asking about obviously her long-term goal is to get into senior leadership. And she'd love to hear about what was the biggest challenge from all of you. We can start with Senyogita about making the shift from junior to senior leadership.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I think one of the challenges as an engineer is you like to do it all. You want to be hands-on, and you want to be you want to be like, I want to know exactly how this works and go deep dive into it. And that happened to me initially. I was like doing that and trying to solve somebody's problem. And you have to step back and let people kind of figure that out themselves. Ask the questions, but don't try to solve the problems. I think that's one advice that I would give.
I would totally agree with that. It's such you want to problem solve when you come from an engineering background and control the situation, and it's just so built into you based on your training. But like you said, you got to let go. You have to realize that as one person, you can only drive so much output. If you can influence 10 people to, rally behind that vision and do it, you'll produce so much more. So totally agree.
I think the art of delegation and trust. You brought or built your team for a reason. They have a certain skill set. And so being able to delegate and step away and trust that they're going to come to you with a strong final product, I think is extremely important in making that transition.
Absolutely. Trisha asked about women in space. So Shelly, before we round out this event, what do you think young women who want to become leaders in space should focus on? That's pretty cool.
That is really cool. And there's lots of opportunities for women in space. So that's whether you want to go to Mars, or do you want to design the rocket that goes to Mars, or do you want to be part of the telecommunication system that helps us communicate more with Mars, or do you want to be a medical doctor that takes that technology we learn about extending the life, slowing the aging process by going to Mars and apply that here on Earth. So there are so many opportunities that you can be part of, including the manufacturing sector, because SpaceX and all these other companies don't do it without a huge supply chain too. So it's without really understanding where your passion is, you have a lot of career opportunities. And so follow your passion, because no matter what you want to do, you have a way to participate in the space ecosystem, which, just so you know, is $424 billion and is going to triple by 2030. So this is the future. So, you don't have to be Elon Musk. You could be a data analyst. There's so many other things. So follow your passion and you will find your way to apply that in a space career.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love ending on space because it's just such an incredible sector to think about. And Shelly, thank you for all the work you do in that space. But we could go on for another 2 hours at least with this panel, and such great questions coming in from the audience that I wish we could keep going on with. But have to wrap it. You're all very busy leaders and you do have to get back to work, unfortunately. That is just what you have to do. It's been such a pleasure to host you. Thank you on behalf of the entire BrainStation community for taking the precious time to share your insights, your guidance with our audience. Yeah, thank you so much. And there's so much to learn from. We're making progress across the board. This is a positive, uplifting conversation. And thank you for being those change agents. And thank you, Joanna. As always, such a pleasure to work with you and alongside you as a founder, as a woman leader. You're an inspiration. Thank you so much. And to everyone that's tuned in, thank you again. Hopefully we'll see you at our next event on how to become a digital leader. Fantastic panelists from Twitch, from AWS, from Peloton, and the New York Times. Anyway, until next time, everyone, thank you so much. Stay well and stay safe. Bye-bye.